In the small town of Grayson, where pine-covered mountains rise and green fields stretch endlessly to the horizon, there lies a sorrowful story about a 6-year-old boy named Alex Davis Grayson. With its narrow village roads and humble wooden houses, seemed like the perfect place to build beautiful childhood memories. Yet for Alex, the town was filled only with shadows of the past. Every road, every house, every tree reminded him of a loss far too great for him to ever overcome. Once a lively and energetic child, Alex used to be a cheerful little boy who loved singing and enthusiastically shared stories with his mother about animals he saw in the park or tales from his classmates. He was always making people laugh with his mischievous antics and vivid imagination. But everything changed one winter day last year when a tragic accident took the life of his father. That accident shattered not only Alex but his entire family, leaving behind an irreparable void. That day, Alex and his father were returning home from a short trip. The icy rain and bitter cold had made the roads dangerously slick, and in one unfortunate moment, their car skidded on black ice and plunged into the river below. The haunting image of his father being swept away by the freezing water, unreachable and lost, became a permanent scar in Alex's memory. From that day forward, Alex changed. He was no longer the bright, talkative child he once was. Instead, he became a boy of silence. No one could truly understand why, but Alex simply stopped speaking. His mother, Sophia, his beloved and closest companion, tried everything to bring him back. From heartfelt conversations to visits with psychologists, she exhausted all options, yet nothing could reach him. Alex remained silent, his deep eyes filled with sorrow, never uttering a single word. Sophia, with her gentle hands and weary heart, bore more than her share of pain. As a single mother, she carried not only the grief of losing her husband, but also the silent agony of her son's condition. She no longer knew what to do to help him open up again. She often reminisced about the days when Alex would run through the house laughing, asking endless questions about the world around him. Now those joyful moments felt like distant echoes. She watched as her son sat quietly on the floor, carefully arranging his colored pencils in neat, meticulous lines, utterly silent. One morning, with a spring storm rolling in and rain pouring outside, Alex sat by the window, his eyes following the raindrops as they slid down the glass. Sophia sighed deeply as she prepared to leave for work. She couldn't leave Alex home alone, but there was no one else to watch him. In moments like these, all she could do was hope he would stay safe while she was gone. She gently called out to him, asking him to put on his shoes and get ready. Alex looked up at her with those deep, unreadable eyes. Finally, he nodded and silently walked off to get dressed, following her instructions, but never speaking a word. Sophia's heart ached as she looked at her son, so distant, so lost. He was no longer the child she once knew. The boy she had raised and loved now felt like a ghost, emotionless, voiceless. Yet she didn't give up. Every day, despite his silence, she stayed by his side, hoping that one day Alex would speak to her again. Then on a stormy, rain-soaked afternoon, with cold winds howling through the trees, Sophia suddenly sensed something was wrong. She couldn't find Alex in the house, panicked. She rushed outside, only to see her son out in the storm as if searching for something. Fear gripped her heart as she chased after him, thinking he might have gone too far. But what she found in the woods behind their house was something she couldn't believe. Alex was standing beside a German shepherd, with its mouth tightly taped shut, looking at it with a mixture of pain and compassion in his eyes. The dog looked exhausted and wounded, as if it had survived a terrible ordeal. Not a single word passed between them, but in the shared silence of Alex and the dog, there was a powerful connection, an unspoken bond that even Sophia couldn't fully understand. The story of Alex and the dog, later named Max, was only just beginning, but it promised a journey filled with drama and emotion, a journey where both boy and dog would find each other and slowly find themselves again. The spring rain fell heavily, soaking every corner of the town of Grayson, and perhaps the worst was yet to come. Sophia Davis, a single mother, stepped over puddles, her eyes filled with tears, yet brimming with resilience, anxiously checking her watch. She was about to be late for her shift at Daisy's Diner where she had worked since her husband's passing. The long working hours, the struggle to survive, it was all wrapped up in her weary footsteps each day. But today her worries weren't just about work or the pressures of life. She was worried about Alex, her son, who hadn't spoken a single word in the past 8 months. The days had stretched endlessly for both mother and son, as the pain of losing a husband and father brought with it a storm of silence that overwhelmed Alex's fragile soul. All of yesterday, Sophia had tried her best to find a babysitter for Alex, but everyone around was busy with their own lives. She didn't want to leave him alone, but in such circumstances, she had no other choice. She knew that leaving Alex at home alone, though terrifying, was still better than letting him face the inner storm of his mind completely alone. She turned to look at the small wooden house they had lived in for so many years, its old walls and the window weighed down by a deep sadness. She didn't know that leaving the house today might be the last time she'd see the carefree, innocent version of Alex she once knew. The rain kept falling and her anxiety only grew heavier. Sophia turned back to grab the umbrella, hesitated for a long while, then stepped inside. Alex was sitting silently on the floor, his small hands fiddling with crayons, as if trying to organize the entire world in a special way only he could understand. Only she could sense something deeply different in her son's eyes. Every time she looked into them, she saw no joy, no smile like before. Only emptiness remained, as if Alex had left this world, and only his body stayed behind his soul, stranded in some faraway place. "Alex, will you come with Mommy today?" Her voice was gentle, yet filled with worry. She couldn't hide. She had grown used to her son not responding when she called, but today something felt different. The boy looked up, his deep eyes meeting hers for just a moment before turning away again. There was no reply, only silence lingering in the room. Alex, the boy she loved with all her heart, seemed to be in another world altogether. Anxiousness welled up inside Sophia, but she had no choice. She needed to go out, needed to work to sustain their life. With a deep sigh, she said, "We're going now. Alex, I'll take you to Mrs. Parsons' house, okay?" She could only hope that Mrs. Parsons, their kind neighbor, would arrive in time to watch over Alex so he wouldn't feel so alone. Just then, Alex stood up, quietly moving toward the door without saying a word. Sophia could only follow behind her, unease rising with each passing minute. Her heart pounded, fearing what might happen to her son in her absence. She watched Alex step outside his footsteps, steady despite the rain, his eyes still empty, but seemingly driven by something unseen. As they stepped out the door, the rain had grown heavier. The cold pierced her skin, but Sophia no longer cared about the weather. She only prayed that Alex wouldn't do anything dangerous. She glanced toward the neighbor's house, hoping Mrs. Parsons had arrived, but saw no one. Strangely, Alex kept walking toward the forest behind their home. Sophia called after him, but there was no response. A chilling fear began to rise in her. Not from the rain, not from the approaching dusk, but from the unnatural silence of her son. The boy walked past the garden, not once turning to look back at his mother, showing no sign of fear or difficulty. Sophia began to run after him, her heart pounding wildly. She couldn't understand what was happening. Alex's steps led her into the thick forest behind the house, the place he had always loved. But today the forest had become a cold, eerie place, as though it hid something dark and secret. "Alex, what are you doing here?" Sophia screamed, but received no reply. At that moment, her fear peaked. She rushed forward faster, and when she finally caught up, an unbelievable sight appeared before her eyes. Alex was standing next to a German shepherd whose mouth was tightly taped shut. The dog looked at Sophia with eyes full of pain and fear, but it did nothing except lie there breathing heavily. Alex still stood there silently, as if this dog had somehow become an inseparable part of his life. Sophia felt a pang in her heart as she saw her son beside this pitiful creature, surrounded by silence. What was happening to her child? Why was he here? Why had he rescued at dawn in such a state? But Sophia couldn't answer those questions just yet. She knew she couldn't leave Alex alone in the forest with the dog. No matter what, she had to bring him home, had to protect him. But could she do that when it seemed Alex had already bonded with his dog more than ever before? The rain kept falling, each drop like a tear from the sky, soaking into the ground and creating a heavy atmosphere that blanketed the forest behind the house. Sophia couldn't believe what she was witnessing. For the first time in the past 8 months, Alex walked forward in absolute silence, his eyes deep and cold as if he were chasing something invisible without a single word of explanation. She tried calling his name, but Alex didn't respond. His footsteps seemed to drift farther and farther into the forest, the very place Sophia had always warned him not to go. A sense of unease rose within her like a crashing wave pounding hard against her chest. With every passing second, her fear grew stronger. Alex was no longer the cheerful, innocent child he used to be. He had changed. He had been silent for too long, and now it seemed he no longer listened to her. She ran after him, heart tightening, terrified that something terrible was about to happen. The cold rain soaked through her clothes, but nothing could stop her. She knew that if she didn't find out the reason in time, she would lose Alex forever. Deeper into the forest, the only sounds were the rustling of leaves beneath her feet and the pounding rain. Suddenly, Sophia spotted a small figure standing near a large tree trunk. She let out a breath of relief, thinking Alex had finally stopped. But as she got closer, what she saw made her heart stop. Next to Alex was a German shepherd lying motionless on the ground, its mouth taped shut. The dog, with matted fur and tired eyes, looked at Sophia with fear and pain. She couldn't believe her eyes. A wounded dog, its mouth sealed, lay there like a soulless creature on the verge of death. What sent a chill down her spine even more was the bond between Alex and this dog. The boy wasn't afraid. There wasn't the slightest sign of panic. On the contrary, Alex sat beside the dog, his small hands gently stroking its fur as if the mutter were an irreplaceable part of his life. His eyes, though expressionless, held something that made Sophia uneasy. He didn't just look at the dog with affection. He seemed to understand the pain it was going through. "Alex, what are you doing?" Sophia shouted, her voice trembling with worry. But Alex didn't turn around. He remained seated, his eyes fixed on the dog, gasping for breath. Sophia could see the dog, Max unable to move its injuries, tearing at her heart. She stepped closer, full of concern and fear. "My son, this dog is badly hurt," Sophia said, her voice choked with emotion. But still there was no reply from Alex. She reached out her hand, trembling, and placed it on Alex's shoulder, trying to pull him away from the dog. But Alex recoiled, a firm gesture that Sophia had never seen from him before. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time in 8 months, she sensed something there, a determination, a deep connection. Max, the German shepherd, wasn't just a random creature Alex had found. He was part of a secret military project called Project Sentinel. This dog had been trained to become a biological weapon, and the wounds on his body weren't just the result of brutal experimentation, they were scars of a life lived under compulsion. The test performed on Max had stripped him of emotion, leaving him cold and mechanical, a tool of war devoid of humanity. But strangely, Max had formed a special bond with Alex. That was why when Alex looked into Max's eyes, he didn't see a suffering animal. He saw a friend, a companion in need. Something stronger than fear and pain bound them together, an inseparable connection. Both of them were wounded beings, yet capable of saving each other. Sophia stood in silence, overwhelmed with worry. She couldn't understand what was happening between her son and the dog, but Alex's eyes seemed to be telling her that he couldn't abandon Max, that he needed to save the dog, the same way he wished someone would save him from his own pain. "Alex, we can't save this dog. He's too badly hurt." "We have to go back," Sophia said in a broken voice, knowing those words wouldn't stop her son. Alex didn't turn away. He continued to gently stroke Max, saying nothing. And it broke her heart. Finally, with a painful decision, Sophia chose to help her son. No matter how bad things were, she couldn't let Alex face this pain alone. She gently knelt down, removed the tape from Max's mouth, and tried to help the dog to his feet. Max, though weak and exhausted, seemed to feel the support from Sophia and Alex. He let out a deep sigh, and in his eyes there was something silent gratitude. The bond between Alex and Max was not just ordinary friendship. It was salvation. It was hope. It was a spiritual strength that couldn't be broken. And in that moment, Sophia realized that no matter how painful and dark life could be, love and connection still existed even in the bleakest of times. The rain was falling harder and harder, casting a heavy, cold atmosphere that mirrored the emotions stirring within Sophia. She stood just outside the forest, her eyes never leaving Alex's silhouette, the boy she loved so dearly. The child who had been her only solace during the darkest days of her life had become someone she no longer understood. Alex sat there right beside the motionless German shepherd, staring off into the distance, as if nothing else in the world mattered, except that dog Max, the German shepherd. Alex was caring for looked pitiful. He lay there exhausted, drained with blood, oozing from wounds all over his body. His mouth had been sealed tightly with duct tape. He couldn't breathe properly, couldn't whimper, could only take short, shallow breaths. The wounds on his body were not just from survival battles in the forest, but the visible scars of a past filled with pain and cruelty. Max wasn't just any dog. He was a product of Project Sentinel, a secret military program created for purposes no one could imagine. Inhumane experiments had turned Max into a voiceless creature, robbed of freedom, left only with pain and despair. But strangely, when Alex looked into Max's eyes, he didn't see a wounded animal. He didn't see the suffering and hopelessness the dog was enduring. Instead, he saw a friend, an inseparable companion, a creature bearing the same pain as his own. Alex could feel Max's pain, and in that moment a mysterious connection formed, one so profound it defied explanation. Perhaps that was why he couldn't leave Max, even knowing the dog bore wounds that could never heal. Sophia watched from afar, her heart tightening as she saw her son forming such a deep bond with the dog. She couldn't comprehend why Alex clung to this animal so intensely. He was still just a child with so much of life left to explore and learn. Alex, with his deep eyes and an indescribable silence, seemed to be searching for something in Max's gaze, something he couldn't yet define. His small hands gently comforted the dog, as if consoling a dear friend. But why Max? Why not another animal? Sophia could no longer hold back. She rushed forward, calling Alex's name, but the boy didn't respond. For a moment, she felt as if her world had collapsed, not just because she was losing her son, but because of the connection between him and the dog, a connection she couldn't understand. She couldn't let her son continue like this. She couldn't let him drown in this silence forever. She had to do something. Alex, we have to go home now. I don't want you to get cold. Her voice was gentle but firm. She gently tugged at Alex's arm, but he refused to move away from Max. He looked up at her eyes, no longer filled with childish innocence, but with the resolve of someone who had endured too much pain. I'm not going. I have to help Max, Alex whispered, but his voice was full of determination. Sophia heard every word, but she couldn't grasp the meaning behind them. Was Alex searching for his own salvation by saving Max? She didn't know, but she could feel her son changing and changing in a way she couldn't keep up with. She looked into Max's eyes again, and in the dog's golden gaze, she saw something strange. A faint light, as if Max was trying to say something. A sense of unease rose in her chest. She didn't know why, but she sensed that the bond between Alex and Max wasn't just between a boy and a dog. It was far deeper than that. Suddenly, strange noises echoed from the distance, from somewhere beyond the forest. A sense of danger was drawing near, and Sophia immediately felt a shift in the atmosphere. She knew she couldn't let Alex and Max stay here any longer. They had to leave now. She pulled Alex's arm harder, but he still refused to let go of Max. Alex, we have to go, she shouted, but he still didn't respond. His eyes remained locked on Max, as if only this dog could save him from the pain he carried inside. She couldn't understand how a 6-year-old could have formed such a powerful bond with an animal he had only just met. The feeling of dread returned, crashing through her like a tidal wave. Max, despite his severe injuries, didn't try to get up, but strangely he showed no fear as Alex continued to stroke him. In fact, there was something in Max's eyes that Sophia couldn't explain, as if this dog wasn't just a wounded creature, but a true friend to Alex. Maybe Max understood that Alex too was in pain, and that the boy needed this comfort more than anything. In that moment, Sophia realized it wasn't just Alex who needed Max. Max needed Alex too. This wasn't a simple rescue between human and animal, but a mutual salvation between two souls, both broken, both clinging to each other to survive. She could no longer stop Alex. The bond between him and Max was unbreakable. Sophia stood still, sighed, then slowly knelt down, helping Alex remove the duct tape from Max's mouth. She knew that no matter how dangerous things became, Alex's eyes would not leave Max until the dog was safe and whole again. And that was the truth about love and loyalty forces that no one could ever tear apart. Sophia's heart felt like it stopped when she saw Alex speak for the first time after 8 long months of silence. The air grew heavy, and everything around them seemed to freeze. Alex was no longer the shy, quiet boy he once was. He had found his voice again, but it wasn't a greeting, nor was it an innocent question like before. It was a scream, a cry filled with anger and pain that echoed through the quiet forest. "No, I won't let Max go." Alex shouted, his eyes wide, full of determination, overflowing with emotions Sophia hadn't seen in so long. This was the first time in 8 months that she heard her son's voice. But this scream wasn't a release, it wasn't a sign of healing. Instead, it was a powerful declaration that Alex had decided to confront the world he had left behind, a world that once silenced him, a world full of fear, anxiety, and sorrow. Though Max still lay motionless beside Alex, he no longer seemed like a weak, wounded creature. The dog had formed a strange connection with the boy, as if it understood the emotional wounds Alex carried. Max had become a friend, a companion through Alex's long and painful journey. Sophia stood frozen, unsure of what to do in that moment. She had tried everything to help her son find his voice, but now that he had spoken, what he said was not what she had expected. "Alex, you can't keep going like this. You can't live in a world of pain forever. You have to move forward. You have to heal," Sophia said, her voice trembling with emotion. She didn't want her son to drown in silence and suffering any longer. But she knew Alex was no longer the child she could easily guide. He had grown, endured too many hardships, too much pain and loss. Alex no longer wanted to live in the past. He didn't want to endure the silence any longer. Looking into Alex's eyes, Sophia saw that he had changed. He was no longer the innocent boy she once knew. A sense of maturity, a new strength had taken root in her son's mind. He was no longer running away. Alex had faced his pain, and now he was ready to speak up. But Sophia couldn't fully understand that transformation. She couldn't understand why Alex had bonded so deeply with Max, a dog he had only met a few days ago. Why would he choose such a suffering creature to be his anchor? "Max saved me," Alex said, his voice both fragile and firm. Those words struck Sophia speechless. She stared at her son in disbelief. He didn't just speak, he believed that Max was the one who pulled him from the darkness. This miraculous bond wasn't just between a boy and a dog. It was a form of salvation they had given each other. Alex had found in Max an understanding, an honest friendship he hadn't known since losing his father. "Max understands me. Max didn't leave me. I can't leave Max," Alex continued, his voice growing stronger as if each word was a step forward in facing the truth. Sophia couldn't stop what her son was saying. She realized that whether she liked it or not, he had taken control of his own life. He could no longer be pulled back into painful memories, and that hurt her deeply. She had spent her life protecting her son, but now he had grown up. He was ready to face the world and the suffering she couldn't protect him from. Since losing her husband, Sophia's life had been filled with loneliness and constant worry for her son's future. But now, watching Alex fiercely defend Max, she felt as if something within her had been released. Her son was no longer a broken child. He was a warrior, someone strong enough to protect himself and those he loved. Sophia's emotions spilled over in that moment. She could do nothing but embrace Alex, her eyes full of tears as she looked at her son. He was no longer the silent, wounded child he was, now a young man who had found his voice ready to confront pain and hardship to protect what he loved. And in that moment, Max, the German shepherd, seemed to sense something too. He lifted his head and looked into Sophia's eyes as if he knew that Alex was no longer alone. And that was the moment everything changed. Sophia realized that no matter how painful it might be, she couldn't stop the love her son had found. And perhaps in that moment, she too found healing from her son's courage and the love that had brought him back. The rain had stopped, but the atmosphere remained heavy, as if warning of something terrible about to happen. Sophia stood staring at Alex, a wave of worry crashing in her chest like a breaking tide. Although they had found Max and done everything they could to save the dog, a sense of unease still lingered. It wasn't over. They hadn't truly escaped the threat of the dark forces trying to take Max and possibly even Alex. She looked into the distance where the black cars of the government forces were parked at the edge of the forest, even though she knew time was running out. Sophia couldn't shake the fear that gripped her. These people, the ones hunting Max, weren't normal. They were from a secret project she didn't fully understand, and people like that didn't stop until they got what they wanted. A chill truth reached the core of her soul, but she couldn't stop now. She couldn't let them win. When Alex stood up, his eyes were filled with resolve. His arms clutched Max tightly, and Sophia knew her son had changed. Alex was no longer a vulnerable little boy. He wasn't scared. Not anymore. All that remained was his determination to protect this dog, to protect what he loved. But the world wasn't a place where love and determination alone could shield everything. Mom, we can't just stand still. I'm going to protect Max, Alex said, his voice filled with determination, but also exhaustion. Sophia looked at her son, unable to ignore the pain in his eyes. But in that moment, she realized that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stop Alex. He had made his choice, and he wouldn't turn back. "You can't face this alone," Sophia whispered. But Alex said nothing, his eyes still locked on Max. Nothing could change his mind now. Sophia knew then that it wasn't just Alex fighting for Max. It was a battle between conscience and evil, between justice and insatiable greed. And right then, just as the two of them were about to leave, a group of people emerged from the forest, shadows stepping out from behind the trees like silent warriors. They were Guardian. Watch a group of individuals dedicated to protecting beings harmed by illegal military programs. They weren't heroes. They were defenders of justice, people brave enough to challenge the power of dangerous organizations. These people had been trained to fight, and now they were the only ones who could help Sophia and Alex escape the relentless hunt for Max. When Sheriff Winters, the leader of the group, saw Sophia and Alex, he stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Alex as if he could see the maturity and determination inside the boy. "We don't have much time. They'll be here in a few minutes. We have to move now," Sheriff Winters said, his voice deep, firm, but laced with concern. Even with the help of Guardian Watch, the danger they faced was undeniable. The people chasing Max had no conscience. They were willing to do whatever it took to reclaim what they believed was theirs. Without another word, the Guardian Watch team sprang into action. Sophia and Alex were led through winding forest paths deeper into the safety zone the group had prepared. They moved like shadows, avoiding the beams of light from patrolling vehicles. Max was still in Alex's arms, and the boy never once took his eyes off the dog, never loosened his grip, as if they were now one. But the danger wasn't only about being seen. Every step, every decision was laced with tension and suspense. Sophia could feel the danger pressing, and every small sound, every rustle in the night made her flinch. It felt like eyes were watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. When they finally reached a small house hidden in the woods, the safe house Guardian Watch had prepared. No one spoke a word. Everyone was breathless from the tension, and Sophia felt utterly drained. They had escaped for now, but this wasn't the end. The house was only a temporary shelter. Everything was still far from over. That night, Guardian Watch held an emergency meeting. Sophia, Alex, and Max sat quietly in a corner, listening to the reports from the team members. They couldn't stay long. They couldn't go any further without a plan. The goal now was to get Max to a truly safe place somewhere no one could ever track him again. But the anxiety hadn't faded. Sophia couldn't stop thinking about their pursuers. Would they have enough time to escape? Would Max and Alex be safe? These questions circled endlessly in her mind. But she couldn't let fear paralyze her. She had to be strong for her son, for the dog, for whatever was left of their life together. And just as the Guardian Watch team prepared to move again, a loud noise erupted outside the house. Heavy footsteps, voices calling in the darkness. The chase had caught up to them. The group had to run once more. Under the gray sky of the forest, everything seemed still. But inside Sophia, a sense of worry rose within her. Max, the German Shepherd dog that she and Alex had tried so hard to save, was no longer a weak and injured creature. It was not just a test subject of the Sentinel Project, but also a symbol of resistance of the ongoing struggle to protect the right to life and freedom. But the harsh truth was that they had not yet completely escaped the dangers from the government and the dark forces hunting Max. Since Alex found Max and decided to rescue him, their lives had never been the same. The three of them, Sophia, Alex, and Max, had entered a fight not just to protect themselves, but to oppose a ruthless force they could not control. The Sentinel Project was not just a secret military program. It was a powerful machine ready to crush anything in its path to continue its cruel experiments. One night, as Sophia and Alex were sheltering in a temporary house, they sensed danger approaching. Sheriff Winters, head of the Guardian Watch Group, had warned them earlier that once information about Max leaked, there would be no safe place. The people from the Sentinel Project were not easy to defeat. They had immense resources and relentlessly pursued anyone who tried to expose their secrets. Sophia sat next to Alex, her eyes full of worry as she looked at her son. She knew that this fight was not just their own. It was a fight for justice, for the truth, and for the right to live freely. But she also knew that they couldn't always run from these forces. She didn't want to lose her son, didn't want to lose Max. And above all, she couldn't let those evil people continue to harm innocent creatures. Alex, we can't run forever, Sophia whispered, her voice choking. She knew Alex didn't want to leave Max, and the boy also understood that no matter how much he loved the dog, they couldn't live in constant flight. They had to face the Sentinel Project, and that was something Alex could not avoid. The boy looked at his mother, his eyes still deep and determined. I'm not afraid of them anymore. I will protect Max. What do we have to do to stop them? Alex asked, his voice small but strong. In Sophia's heart, worry grew even stronger, but she understood that Alex was ready to face the truth. The son she had fought to protect had now grown up and was ready to fight for what he loved. Just then, Sheriff Winters entered, his eyes serious. They're getting close and they won't stop until they have Max, he said. All eyes turned to him. The Guardian Watch had prepared a plan to fight against the forces of the Sentinel Project, but they knew that nothing would be easy. Max was a special creature, and once it fell into the hands of those people, it would become a powerful weapon for their dark schemes. We don't have much time. We'll have to confront them head on. If not, there will be no chance to protect Max and no chance for Alex to live the life he deserves. Sheriff Winters continued, his voice determined, but also full of worry. He knew that if they didn't act now, they wouldn't have the opportunity to fight back. The group decided to strike first, rather than waiting for the relentless pursuit of the Sentinel Project. They were ready for a confrontation they knew would mean certain death if they failed. Sophia couldn't stop thinking about her son. She couldn't let Alex face these dangers alone. But she also understood that this was the moment they had to rise up, not only to protect Max, but to defend what was right, what belonged to freedom. When they reached the point where they had to act, a group of Sentinel Project agents appeared cold and indifferent. Every step they took was decisive, their eyes filled with cruelty. Sophia felt her heart tighten. They didn't just want to capture Max. They wanted to erase everything the Guardian Watch was doing. They weren't just threatening Max's life, but also the lives of protectors like Sheriff Winters and Sophia. The confrontation began. Gunshots rang out, but it wasn't a fight of bullets. It was a fight of courage. Sophia held Alex's hand, feeling like everything around them was falling apart. Alex wasn't afraid. The boy was ready to face any danger to protect Max. And in that moment, Max also stood up. Though it was still weak and in pain, it stood tall. It understood that this fight was not just for humans, but for life and death. With a precise shot, one of the opposing agents fell. The Guardian Watch fought with all they had, and although they may not win, they created a change in this world. Max and Alex would no longer have to live in fear. They would stand up, fight, and protect their freedom. When everything ended, Sophia looked at Alex and Max, and she realized that no matter how many challenges they would face in the future, they would always protect each other, because in this life, nothing was more important than loyalty, love, and the courage to do what's right. Night fell, and the atmosphere in the forest became eerie, with the sound of leaves rustling underfoot. Sophia and Alex stood outside the makeshift house that Guardian Watch had prepared for them, looking toward the distance where the patrol vehicles of Project Sentinel were slowly approaching. The powerful headlights illuminated the darkness, highlighting the shadowy figures of masked agents who showed no fear or humanity. Max, the German Shepherd, who had fought alongside them throughout their journey, lay quietly next to Alex, his eyes glowing with determination and understanding. He knew that this fight was not just to protect himself, but to free all the creatures like him, to protect all those who had been exploited by the cruelty of Project Sentinel. The tension rose within Sophia. She knew this was the decisive moment. If they failed, not only would Max be lost, but both Alex and she would never find peace again. Everything, all the efforts she and Alex had made, would be for nothing. Looking at Alex, her eyes couldn't hide the worry she felt. Her son had grown beyond the pain, but now he would face even greater challenges. Each step they took was filled with danger, but in Alex's eyes, she saw determination and strength that he had never shown before. He was ready to face this force, to protect Max and to fight for justice. "Mom, what do we need to do to end this?" Alex asked, his voice echoing in the dark. The silence he had maintained for months was gone, replaced by a tone full of resolve. Sophia looked at him, feeling both pain and pride fill her heart. Her little boy was no longer the fragile child, but a true warrior. Yet she knew he was still her son, a child who had never stopped seeking justice, and now was the time for him to act. "You have to do what you believe is right, Alex. No matter what, we must end this. If not, Max and all the creatures like him will forever be oppressed." Sophia replied, gripping her son's hand, feeling the strength from him pass into her. At that moment, Sheriff Winters stepped forward, his face cold, his gaze resolute. "We don't have time." "Wow," he said, his voice filled with tension. "They won't stop until they get Max. And this time we have to end it. Not just to protect Max, but to protect all the innocent people from Project Sentinel." The members of Guardian Watch lined up, preparing for the final confrontation. Sophia, Alex, and Max stood beside them, ready to fight a battle they never wanted. Max stared at Alex, his eyes full of trust. Just like Alex, he knew this fight was for his survival, and he would not give up. "We won't let them take Max," Sheriff Winters barked, gripping his gun tightly. "Everyone follow me." The sound of footsteps echoed as the group entered the forest, facing the enemy. Sophia felt her heart tighten. She couldn't stop worrying about what was about to happen. Every smallest sound, every light from the project. Sentinel patrol vehicles made her tense, but in that moment, she knew they couldn't be afraid. If they didn't act now, they would never have another chance. Guardian Watch split into smaller groups, ready to attack from multiple sides. Sophia couldn't help but look at Alex. Her son, though small, was now a true warrior, ready to protect Max. And what was right, Max, the German Shepherd, was just as brave. He charged into battle with Alex as though he knew this was his final fight, not just to protect himself, but to fight for the freedom of all oppressed creatures. The battle erupted in the darkness. Gunshots rang out, but it wasn't just a fight about weapons. This was a battle of conscience, of resistance. Sophia heard the footsteps of the special agents approaching, but she wasn't afraid. She saw Alex and Max fighting together like an unstoppable force. The dog was no longer a wounded creature, but a symbol of resilience and courage. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Sheriff Winters led the attack, each step bringing them closer to the enemies trying to capture Max. Gunshots continued to ring out, but in the darkness, amidst the chaos, Alex didn't stop. He charged into battle alongside Max, protecting the dog as though he were protecting his own life. Max didn't leave Alex. It growled in pain but with strength, as though it understood this battle wasn't just for humans, but for all oppressed creatures. As the battle began to subside, the Project Sentinel agents felt some of the Guardian Watch members wounded, but they had won. Max and Alex stood side by side, no longer afraid. Sophia looked at her son and the dog, her heart filled with pride. This battle, though not completely over, had been an important victory. But Sophia knew that even though they had won today, Project Sentinel was still a dangerous force. And no matter how many challenges they would face, Sophia, Alex, and Max wouldn't stop. They had started this battle, and they would continue to fight for justice, for freedom, for what was right.